Yo, it's Guido coming at you with a tactics talk and a tank review of the brand new premium Tier 8 German Kanonenjagdpanzer 105. Look at that thing. It's got a 105 on it. You may be looking at that and saying, hey, I've seen this somewhere before. Well, almost. Its twin, the Kanonenjagdpanzer, has a 90mm on it. This is an already available premium, but this one is a new with a 105 premium, which is supposedly going to solve some of the issues with the original Kanonenjagdpanzer, which was pretty much roundly terrible. Or at least people said so. It had a lot going for it. Most people didn't like it. The gun was quite weak, but it had its strengths. As usual with my reviews, we'll go over an overview. We'll look at the tech tree considerations, take a look at the 3D model, do a comparison amongst its peers, both premium and some of the tech tree. We'll look at my stats. I've played 20 games in this thing, my setup, and then we'll have 3 examples of gameplay in the Kanonenjagdpanzer 105. Let's hit up the overview. As you can see, it looks exactly like the Kanonenjagdpanzer with the 90, other than it's got a much larger gun. So it's the twin of the original Kanonenjagdpanzer. It's just more well endowed, I guess. You can see that fairly flat-sided. This thing has no armor. We'll look at that later. A little bit of angling on the front, but it's so thin it really doesn't matter a whole bunch. So you're not going to rely on armor on this thing, but you will rely on its speed and its punch, which we'll talk about. Apparently, the Kanonenjagdpanzer was actually a tank that was mass-produced. 770 vehicles for the Bundeswehr, I don't know how you say that, and the Belgian Armed Forces, which I can say had 80 of these things. And it served into the 90s, or early 90, until 1990, I guess, right at the beginning of the 90s. They talked about upgrading the original 90mm to this 105 version, which they never did. So this is kind of the napkin tank, fantasy tank. Although I guess it's not really a fantasy tank, is it? The chassis was built. There was a plan to put 105s on it. They didn't do it. This is the result of what would have been the tank, at least in World of Tanks, with the 105. Let's not get too crazy. None of these tanks are exactly what they were, especially when you start talking about upgrading them and getting them elite and whatnot. But in any event, that's the overview. Pretty long tank and fairly large, actually, about the same size as an ISU, maybe slightly smaller. It has a low profile, so that will help it. Kind of Sturv low profile, WZ low profile, but obviously much lower than a Jagdtiger or the giant Jagdpanther 2 right there. So that's going to help this thing zip around a little bit. And while it's not exactly E25 size as compared to its peers at tier, it's close to it, and people are going to compare this tank to the E25 quite a bit, and I'll talk a little bit about that as we go, because it is similar in some respects. In a couple respects it is not similar at all. So there's the overview, and now on to tech tree considerations for the Kanonenjagdpanzer 105. As far as tech tree considerations go for the Kanonenjagdpanzer 105, it's got 4 crew members. It's got a commander, a gunner, a driver, and a loader, and the German TDs as far as crew setups are a bit of a mess. So for the most part, obviously you can move a crew from your JP2 or your Jagdtiger over. You'll get those 4 positions will be trained, but realize things like the Jagdtiger has 6. There's 82 guys in this. No, there's only 6 in that. There's 5. There's 5 in the JP. The Ferdinand's running around with 6. You've got the JP, regular JP at 5, and you get down to the Jagdpanzer 4, and it has 4, which actually sets up nicely. So the point of all that is you're going to leave a couple guys in the barracks drinking tea or coffee or schnapps or whatever it is the German guys drink while they wait for the other part of the crew to come back as you use this as a trainer. So it's not perfect, but it will work. Those are really the only considerations right there for the tech tree, because you come fully elited and there are no modules to upgrade. Also understand that as of right now, it is not in the tech tree, and I don't believe as a new premium it will be dropped in there for any time. Or for some time, let's put it that way. All right, moving on to the 3D model. Now, this is tanks.gg looking at the 3D model. There's not a lot to note here. It has 30mm essentially of armor all around, and at tier 8, that's simply not going to stop anything. So this is red, which is a bit of an issue. I think there's a problem with the modeling as far as the colors go for the collision model here and the penetration values. But what you need to know is it's even angled. Look at the effective armor. I can get it up to 35, and I can angle it highly. I can get up to 44. That's just not going to bounce anything even at high angles right there. The side is sitting at 32 as well, so this thing is just a pinata, 8mm in the back. Really, once it starts getting hit, that's what you've got to avoid, obviously. Once it starts getting hit, you can't really rely on the armor in any way, shape, or form. Any bounces you get are going to be extremely lucky. You've got only about 70 and maybe up to 140 even on the matlet right here. So even the matlet is going to start soaking up shots. Not much else to say other than you really need to avoid being hit. And we'll talk about that during the replays as we go there. We'll move on next to the comparison. The comparison is where it really starts to get interesting with this tank. I liked it quite a bit. We'll talk about how I did, and then we'll look at my replays. I enjoyed playing the tank. I had a good time in it, and I did pretty well with it. Low sample size at 20 battles, so noted there. But when I looked at the comparison, initially I was starting to think, hey, this appears to be a bit of an overpowered tank. I'm not saying it is overpowered, but at tier amongst casemates, it's probably near the top or maybe slightly overpowered amongst those peers. But when I started to really dig in and look at the comparison, I started to realize that it is not as good as I thought, although it is good if you're a good player. So this thing has strengths that good to very good players can exploit quite a bit. And that's going to be its mobility, its good punch, and its decent ability to flex for a casemate, air quotes, for a casemate. All right. I have 4 of the premiums right there, and to include the original Kanonenjagdpanzer right next to it. And I've got another 4 of the tech tree tanks just to kind of look at it. Maybe some of the tanks that sort of play similar in certain cases. You'll notice I have a couple that have turrets, and I have some casemates as well. The one thing about this tank, even though it is casemate and doesn't have a turret, is it has very good mobility. That mitigates to some extent the lack of a turret when it needs to push and move out. We'll talk about that more as we get into the gameplay reviews. But let's take a look at this because it is quite interesting. The firepower is showing at 376, less than the Kanonenjagdpanzer, the original one. And the reason for that is, I'm going to jump ahead a bit here because this surprised me a little. It's got the lowest DPM of all the tanks I've selected right here, down at 2,000. That's actually quite low for a TD and surprised me quite a bit. Look at that WZ-121FT at 2,800. That is, by the way, quite a good casemate TD. And has some of the strengths that the Kanonenjagdpanzer has with being a bit mobile and able to move around. So let's jump back up here. The penetration, though, is one of the things that makes this a very good tank. With the standard penetration being at 268, that is right up there with charioteer levels. That's actually pretty amazing. And you're dropping a 390 Alpha, much like the charioteer, the AMX CDA, not quite at the WZ-120 level of 440 or the Scorpion G at 490 for that matter. Of course, then you got the ISU at 750. That's a whole nother story over there. But a good standard round penetration and pretty good penetration with heat with the premium round. Reload time is long though, so you're going to pay a little bit for that Alpha with a bit of a longer reload. You can see it's almost double actually the Kanonenjagdpanzer, the regular one, which, like I said, has quite a bit more DPM, 2,300, as opposed to its more well-endowed brother at 2,034. So maybe size isn't all that matters. Anyway, we'll just leave those jokes behind as we go. Gun traverse is nice, and it actually has a wide field of regard. If you look down here, something that you look at on casemate TDs that you won't get with turreted, if you look at the Scorpion, that doesn't have that value. But it can look 15 degrees right and left, and that's actually significant. Lets it peek around corners a little bit, lets it better use terrain and rocks to kind of hide some of itself while it angles its gun around the corner to some extent. And 15 is very comfortable being able to track stuff that's moving right to left or left to right with a line of sight. So without actually hitting the gun stop and then resetting your dispersion for moving your turret. That's actually a nice strength. Look at this aiming time. This thing aims fast, and its dispersion is pretty darn good down at 0.31. Not quite Scorpion G levels. I gotta tell you, just to get off track a little bit, I don't believe those numbers on Scorpion G. That gun feels much derpier than 0.29 dispersion and a 278 aiming time. Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong one. 2.01 aiming time. 0.29 and 2.01, that surprised me. In any event, the Kanonenjagdpanzer, both him and his little brother, are pretty good at 0.73 and 0.31 with the dispersion. It's a relatively accurate gun, so pretty good from mid to long ranges. And you're going to want to do a little bit of sniping with this. Like I said earlier, with the zero armor, you really don't want to get hit. Depression is okay at -8. I already passed over that, so let's get back to it. A Charioteer at -10 is very comfortable. Scorpion, anything less than 8 starts to get a little uncomfortable, and the Scorpion does require a little bit of maneuvering and futzing around with the hull and what you're using for hold down positions in order to get a shot off. Not nearly as bad, though, as the WZ-120 at -6, which is pretty miserable, or the JP2 at -6.5. And obviously the ISU running around there with -6 also. Again, I'm coming back to that DPM. Very surprised. That is a bit of a limfac for the tank. Low on hit points, 1,050. Strangely, 150 less than its brother, and that must have been a balancing decision right there. But that surprised me a little bit that it was actually that much less. It's one of the lowest, not quite as bad as the AMX. 50 hit points more than him. There's that armor, just doesn't have any. Now, a lot of its peers don't have any either. Obviously, the Scorpion, the Kanonenjagdpanzer brother both have 30. Only 60 on the Charioteer, 90 on the ISU, although the ISU's armor will save you on occasion with the weird angles. But it's not prototype, T-28 prototype at 203 kind of thing on the whole armor and 203 on the turret. Obviously no turret on this thing, so it's all about the whole 30 on the whole. WHOLE. On the mobility, this is where this tank is going to shine. Look at this bad boy. He is running around at 70 kilometers an hour. That is E75 fast. Takes a little bit for it to get up to speed, but man, when it starts going, it can really move out. The other thing is that its traverse speed is very high at 47.98, which means it can spin around very fast. So that helps it in its late game maneuvers around the map to flex, to either reposition and get to where you're needed, or to gobble up those hit points in the late game when it's garbage time and you're running around just trying to get as many hit points as you can, so that your Win 8 can be inflated and you feel like a big, awesome tanker. Point of that is it's very agile, very fast. It can get you where you need to be. It can also get you in trouble if you are prone to getting forward a lot. So no armor, very fast and agile, can sometimes get you in a lot of trouble. So if you're patient early to mid game and late game, you use that mobility to either flex to places that need your help or to gobble up extra hit points. That is where this thing really starts to shine. And 20 backwards is pretty darn good. That will let you pop out, shoot, and get back about as good as any other Tier 8 TD will do. Concealment's actually decent. Look at it, this top. So this is another kind of E25-esque idea. This is a very stealthy TD. And the Kanonenjagdpanzer, the original one, was always known for that. Its brother, the 105, has the same thing. Although you will notice that when it fires, it loses more camo. Why? Because it's a bigger gun. That makes sense. View range is abysmal at 360. That's just horrific. So you may consider optics or binocs. I'll show you what my setup is there. I don't have that, but it really is going to hurt it a bit when it's attempting to out view range people. Of course, the caveat to that is a TD is usually in a bush or hiding somewhere, so that should help you at least force them to come a little closer to you, which should help you with your view range issues. Signal range is 750, which is incredibly important. No, has nothing to do with it. All right, so what can we get out of this comparison? It's got Scorpion-like or even better mobility. It doesn't have a turret. It hits pretty hard, but it's got low DPM. And like I said, it's very mobile to get around the battlefield. That is why earlier I said for a good to great player who can utilize those strengths of its mobility and its stealthiness and its ability to flex and get where it needs to be, plus gobbling up damage on garbage time, it's very good indeed. But if you are a not very good player to mediocre player, you're going to have to play this thing very careful. And you can do well in it, but you have to avoid getting out and getting yourself in trouble with its mobility. All right, here's how I did in only 20 battles, low sample size. I was at 70%. Obviously, if I get to 100 battles and I'm still at 70, this will be a huge outlier for me. So I would expect this to be closer to 58% by the time I got to around 100 battles. It is a good enough tank that if I'm careful and play well in it, I could probably get into the low 60s, depending on how careful I am. I tend to not be that careful. But 977 is decent on the average XP. Again, 20 battles though. So if we look at this up here, 77% hit rate, so that's a pretty good handling gun. 0 armor use, that's to be expected with 30 millimeters. 1.99 on the damage and 1.86 on the destruction is pretty good. Talked about the experience. The damage per game is on the low side, so that's why I'm saying 70% does not really square with a 1,775 damage per game. So a lot of that's going to be luck at a 20 fight sample size. 892 damage is pretty good. I've got a 1 enemy vehicle spotted. That it should be low because you should not be getting this thing out in front a lot. And destroyed is 1.3, which is not very high. If you compare this, though, to the Scorpion G, where I've had 629 battles with a 55% and a 955 average experience, those are close other than the win rates. We can just discount that based on the sample size. This is a win rate closer than 70%. That what I would expect with the Kanonenjagdpanzer 105 would be closer to 55 is what I'm attempting to say here. But if we look over here, I've got a 2.2 damage, 2.08 destruction, which are close to the Kanonenjagdpanzer, but look at the damage. I'm doing a lot more in the Scorpion G, and I think a lot of that has to do with the DPM being so low on the Kanonenjagdpanzer. While it can get its gun around to the game, and that does help it, it does tend to probably have a little bit lower damage per game, just based on the fact that its DPG is considerably lower than other tanks right there. But the rest of the numbers are relatively close, and that's how I did it, how I did in it. Let's take a look at how I did it with the setup. For the setup, the modules are all deleted, so there's nothing to do with the modules. For my crew, I brought over my Borsig crew, which is a crew that matches. So that's one good thing about the Borsig. This would be a great Borsig training tank right here. But you can see that it's a decent crew with 2 skills and the 3rd skill at 79%, other than this guy, he's down at 99% on his 2nd skill. What did I put on it? I put a rammer, I put vents, and I put camouflage net. Now this is going to be to taste, and there's going to be a lot of people with different opinions on this. There's other ways to do it. Enhanced gun laying drive is definitely a player for a casemate TD who's going to hang out in the bush, so that is an option to replace the camo net with that thing for a more offensive capability. There's an option to drop the vents and put a binoculars on there if you want to give yourself a little more view range. There's just with this tank, there's quite a few different things you could do. I could probably put the enhanced gun laying drive on this and drop the camo net right there for, like I said, a little bit more offensive capability. But when I initially started playing it, I looked at it and said, man, I think I'm going to want to try to stay hidden a little bit more. But it turns out I actually played it moving a lot more than I did hanging out in the bush. I did hang out in bushes, but that was more a draw and view range game, vice just getting close enough and being super stealthy with my camo net. But remember, this thing's got very high camo rating, so add the net on top of that and it's going to get very good indeed. Add the fact that my crew, at least 3 of them, had camo skills as well, and this is going to be an extremely stealthy tank at tier 8. I carried 48 PCR, which is the standard round, interesting, and then heat. This thing is giving you a pen of 330, looking at the wrong one, that's the alpha. So 268, like I talked about in the standard round, 330 on the heat round, is pretty much enough to handle just about any of the super heavies, except for the very hardest of them, and at least at that point you can start picking out weak spots and have a pretty good possibility of punching through them. So it has a gun to handle everything that it sees as far as the gun goes. Small kit, small first aid kit, and a large fire extinguisher. It's a German tank. I recommend automatic fire extinguishers on German tanks. I think, once again, going back to the equipment considerations, there are a lot of different combinations you can use right here based on how you fight the tank. All right, let's head off and look at some examples of the Kanonenjagdpanzer 105. For the first example, you can see I'm here on Ensk. We spawned into the north side on a standard battle. This is the first battle I ever had in this tank, and I don't play a lot of casemate TDs. I guess I have a lot of battles overall, especially compared to a standard player, but as far as the number of battles total I have and the other tanks I usually play, which are going to be heavies, mediums, and scouts, I don't have a whole lot of TD play, and I certainly don't have a lot of casemate TD play. So I'm going to start by being a bit careful. I go back to this bush where I see everybody is, and pretty soon I think better of it and knock some things down because I can't really see through these. I want highlights when I see the tanks, and pretty quickly I give up on sitting back in the corner and I come up here with the 121 because I want to see if I can shoot this gun, see if I can help the team. Now, this is something with casemate TDs that people need to learn. I wish I would have taken that shot right there. You need to get it up and in the fight. You can sit in the back, you can sit in the bush, you can be careful, you can try to be stealthy, but you've got to be close enough to actually affect the battle and take shots. So that back corner where I was a lovely defensive back corner, but it was certainly not going to get me any shots. And I'll put a shot. That's a heat round, unfortunately, and I shot it into a brick wall, and that's going to eat the heat shot and give me nothing. Had it been APCR, I might have had a chance to go through it. And you can see I didn't even get spotted. That's pretty fantastic. Look how fast this thing zooms in, and down to a pretty good dispersion. Take that shot, goes right through it. I get spotted. I knew I was going to be because I knew that defender and the other guy was poking around right there, so I had to go hide behind this building. The 121 rages in. Now I've chosen to go over to the kind of sideshow. There's a 121, a defender. We've got the 4005 shoot barn over there and a WZ 111. So they've actually got us outmanned. The good news for us is they're just kind of passive. I'm looking for a shot on this. I can't tell if he's behind the building or what's blocking. It looks like there may be a building right there. I was hoping somebody might have knocked that building down, so I spent a lot of time messing around with this. It's possible I had some shots on the defender as he moved around a bit, or I could have moved in and helped the T-34 take down the defender. But there you go, there's a shot. That wasn't even fully zoomed in. But it goes in there, takes a hit on the 4005, and works out pretty well for me. Down he goes. So once he dies, it's time to go help. Notice how I immediately start doing something rather than just sit there. A lot of people will go, okay, that's cool, and then sit there waiting for another target. But I can see that we're pushing in on these guys, and I feel like we can get some things done. And unfortunately, the defender was sitting there ready for me. He over-angles, gives me some side, and I shoot it right up under there. You do have to be careful with the heat. Easy to get into the tracks. I see the defender shoot, so I'm going to come around and try to get a shot on him. He's looking to ram me, or at least to face hug me, so I can't get into the lower pike nose. I'm not really sure where I went. I was trying to get down below, but it looks like I actually hit it up top on the plate and took him down. So we got a Sturv sitting here. The 121's done a nice job of falling back. There's a shot right into the Sturv. I'm going to back right into the 121 hitting me in the side. I'm sort of ignoring him. Bam, he hits me. I see him right there, and I've got to kind of ignore that he's there. Unfortunately, I put myself in a pickle. I've got two guys. There he goes. Then he takes me down. So we end up winning that. There's only 3 of them left. That is an example of what I was talking about earlier, where because of the zero armor and the mobility, you're going to be tempted to really press and get up in front and start brawling. But if you get yourself in a crossfire, you're always in trouble no matter how much armor you've got. Let's just face that right there. But the point is, I kind of rage in there. I start taking my shots, and I'm having a good time, but I end up going down because the armor just really isn't there. But not bad. 2,200 for my first battle. Let's take a look at a couple more. The second battle example I've got for you is going to end up being an ace tanker, as is the third one. Out of 20 battles, I got 2 ace tankers. Realize that this is just amongst Watt NA community contributors and whatever employees are currently running around on the live server with this thing before it gets released. As of the date that I'm doing this video, there's still an embargo, so I won't be able to drop this until the embargo is gone. First thing I see is an IS-3, and I just drop it right on him. That's with the standard APCR round. Notice I am playing the vision game here. I'm not letting anyone inside the point where I can be spotted, and if you look at my little white line right there, other than this guy, who I was worried about a little bit, might be able to see me. But remember, this thing has good camo, and I've got my camo net rocking right now. Now, when I move my hull, the camo net stops working. I'm going to reposition here because it looks like the E50 might get some lights coming up this side. The last thing I want is to get pushed from the side by anyone who's hanging out here, and I'm very surprised he doesn't see anybody all the way down that alleyway. It looks like he's shooting at somebody. Then I notice the 416 is still there, so we'll come up and over, and there he is. He's right out in the middle. We'll just take a full zoom in, and we'll crit damage his track. And I get spotted, so notice I actually put him inside the white line, took a shot, made my camo as low as possible, and he ends up seeing me. I do need to watch out because there's a Sturv within draw range up there. And I'm just hoping he'll come forward, which he will. Drop a shot on him. And we'll back up and down he goes. I get spotted again, and notice I immediately started moving. And because there's artillery, I'm going to actually give some line of sight to them. Try to make sure that I can spoil any shots if they happen to be looking up there. More than likely, though, the E50 is being looked at, and all the guys down in the pit are being looked at, in addition to potentially the guys up top. I'm trying to get a light on this E75, but can't find them. Got guys down low. This is a decent spot for seeing down in there. I'm going to start trying to knock down buildings if I can. little bit surprised I can't highlight the Oho. He keeps on backing. I'm thinking, come on, buddy. No, and he stops. So I go ahead and take down that building, and now I can start to get a little highlight on this guy. But I've got the E75 also moving through town here. So a couple choices on shots. There we go. Still on a standard round. I put it right into the turret. Look how nice that accuracy is on that gun. And see how I can just kind of move around as a casemate TD, not really bother. Repositioning is not a problem with this thing. I'll knock down some more building, but don't quite get as much as I want. T20, Batchat 25 ATPs up top. Let's see if I can get a shot on this guy as well. There we go. Nice accuracy. Goes right into him. Good shell velocity, so basically aiming right at this guy and get a shot into this guy's turret, but oh, he goes away. Just gets away. Nope, now he's going to back up. Nope, going forward. Looking for that shot if I can get it. A little bit fixated on him, get frustrated, try to shoot down the building. Down he goes. Now it's just a wasted shot right there. Slight reposition, again, using the vision game here, trying to keep them outside my white line and inside the yellow one. We are getting pushed over on the cap, but they're doing a decent job holding them off over there. We lost up in the north wholesale. This tank's not going to have much to do up in the north. It doesn't have the armor. It could sit back at about A3 or 4 and try long-range shots. And it has the mobility to get away, but I don't think I would do that too much. Pretty much figured the Conway would see me, and the Sturv gets a shot that bounces, if you can believe it. So it must have been like a up on the matlet or something. But then the Scorpion hits me, and I wasn't there long. I mean, I started moving pretty quick as soon as I fired. And now there's that mobility that not a lot of casemate TDs can do this. And this is that E25 kind of idea I talked about, where you can be one place, and once you start getting out of dodge, you can be another place entirely very quickly. So we'll move around this way, hoping that the Conway will come up. I might be a little high on that dune right there. There we go. Oh, and he did not keep coming. He pops and goes back. I think that shot went into him. Yep, so he got hammered. Looks like the 268 got a piece of him, or maybe the 100.01, or multiple guys. And this is where it's difficult with a casemate, because the Conway has a turret. If he comes up and over and I'm pointing right at him, I have a good chance of winning that duel. If I come around a corner and I'm not pointed at him, or he comes around a corner and I'm not pointed at him, then I'm going to have a lot harder time beating him in that, because he's got the turret and can put his gun on much easier than I can. So we'll just move back up. Taking a look at guys over there. The Scorpion G does not look interested in pushing in. Being a Scorpion G and light-skinned, that makes a lot of sense. Thin skin, let's put it that way. There's a shot into the top of the T-28 who's giving me a good angle. Down he goes very quickly. And now I've got to check and make sure that the Scorpion hasn't, in fact, come up. Because while it looked like he was running off, you just never know. If you sit there staring in one direction and don't investigate things, you can often find yourself in a lot of trouble. So I'm messing with him, and I'm kind of ignoring the Sturv for the moment. And I really wish I had actually come up and over and taken a look, but I'm still concerned that he's down in that little hole right there somewhere on the other side of the ridge. We've got a Conway and a 100.01 in the middle. I see the Object 268 moving up, so I'm going to go ahead and use that big kid as support. I'm down to a one-shot to essentially everything on the map. Last thing I want to do is get seen. I'm just watching. I know he's going to top. I'm expecting someone to be right there. And he keeps on trucking, so there's nobody there. So now I'm going to follow him up. That's the casemate thing you got to do. See this dude coming in. Just a rushed shot. I was actually worried the 268 was going to get the kill, so I rushed one in there. I figured that guy wouldn't survive that. Still, though, it would have been better not to have taken that shot so fast. There we go. We got a 704 now. So he's coming in, looking at the 268. We'll drop one right on him. Again, that's an APCR, just a regular round, no problem. I'm like, reload faster, reload faster. That's just RNG loving me right there. But 329, what a low roll. That's terrible. It loved me on the pen, but it hated me on the roll. Two low rolls, actually, a 268 and a 329. So I'm going to sit back here. And I kind of leave the 268 out to dry, but I'm not really sure why he's pushing in like that. There's a Sturv and some other big kids sitting up there. There's that nice snapshot ability of this gun. There's a Sturv and some other things sitting up there, and I just don't... Plus the artillery. Me running in and being spotted by a Sturv who's sitting up near their cap, or the 704 who's probably hanging out there, is just not really a good idea. Artillery is going to take the object and me out pretty quickly if we're not careful. You see, he's just backing down there, waiting for the artillery to take out the 268, just like that. And the Sturv gets him in the side, which is another reason why I'm not up there. That Sturv can shoot him into the side. If he's perched still where he's last seen, he can see that, or if he's gone back to cap, he can also see that area very easily. And as you can see, not only did he see that area, he did not get spotted when he shot. We have pretty good map control. I'm up to 3,500. The 4502 is coming around the north. The 100.01's got that area right there locked down. So they're not going to squeeze through us more than likely. And based on it being a near-dead 704 and a Sturv, it's very unlikely they're going to be looking to push us. They are just hoping they can outspot us and get some shots, use their artillery to knock us down. And we don't have any of our artillery. Our artillery all died, so we're not able to do some spotting and dropping of artillery shells. We've got to somehow get up in there and get shots with line of sight on 2 artillery and 2 TDs, and that's not easy. That's not easy. Now the 103, I've been complaining about him for a while. I think he's been AFK most of the game. There's the Sturv. So the second I see the Sturv and I know where he is, I start moving. I need to come up here. I need to be careful about not getting lit by the 704. I'm going to take a little bit of a chance because I need to get this Sturv into draw range, and that's basically the limit of it right there. So this is good news. He's lit. I'll just shoot one in. I did not see the round hit the ground. So either it did it outside of draw range or I actually hit him. I suspect I probably actually hit him right there. So there he is. Yep, he's got some damage, so probably my damage. Put another shot into him. Ferdy's moving up. He's behind that rock, unfortunately. And I am checking a bit. Gets our 100.01. I am checking a bit to make sure that 704 doesn't drive up next to me. And then he starts backing up, so we'll get a shot into him. 338, another low roll. That's rough. 379 low roll. So I don't know. I didn't pay attention to every shot I took, but so far of those 4, not one of them got to 390. So now we're pushing in the artillery. I know where the 704 is. I am able to move up on him based on where he is. There's the artillery. Nice slow 14-2. And a slight high roll, but not enough to take him down. More than likely someone else kills him because he is tracked and trapped. And I really goof up here. I futz around trying to take a 1-pixel shot on this silly Conqueror. And I'm just bummed that neither one of them hit. So that one misses. That got me spotted. I knew it would. I'm looking at the 704, trying to see if he's coming towards me. I miss again. 704 is still not coming in. And what I should have done is been moving the whole time. I should have gone up to that perch, shot the Conqueror GC down on top, killed him off, or at least done damage, or potentially come up in that little nook to the left and killed the 704. So this is pretty funny, actually. There's a shot. What'd I get? 357, another low roll. Watch this. All right, Conqueror, you're a dead man. I got you. No. Now I'm going to try to dive on him. You know, sometimes things just don't go well all around. It's too fast. I was actually too fast. I completely missed him. Completely missed him. And he ends up dying to the Ferdinand. And there you go. Ace Tanker, 5,013 damage. End up with no kills, interesting. No kills in there, just dropping damage as I go. Lots of low rolls on the gun. And a pretty good example of staying away from being spotted. Number one, when I was spotted, what happened? I got hammered. I lost a bunch of hit points. Also using the mobility to kind of flex around, fall back when I needed to, move forward when I needed to. A lot of casemate TDs have a lot of trouble doing that. In a relatively slowly developing game like this one was, most casemate TDs in this one would have been fine as far as kind of following up and moving. But this one allows you to do it much faster. And it can actually be more critical. Let's move on to one more example. Here's the third example, the second ace tanker that I had. We're on Malinovka, spawned into the west side, and I'm headed up to the sniper perch here. A lot of times I'll take a casemate TD up top, but that has to have some kind of armor. This thing has no armor. So we're going to play the vision game. I choose the Lorraine 40T as a more important target. All else being equal, that was one of those all else being equal kind of situations. Now the scout, I would really like to get rid of the scout, and I blew it. Didn't take the shot. Using the vision game here. Like I said, this one is going to showcase a little bit more of the mobility capability of this tank. Obviously not right now. I am using the bush camping greatness. There's a 342. 385, 342. Let's watch this because those are two more low rolls. I have yet, at least of the shots I've commented on, I have yet to have one high roll. That's not true. I had one on the Conqueror, didn't I? In the last game, there was a 393 or whatever it was, 392. Maybe it was a 398. Doesn't matter. All right. That guy's important. I know I'm going to get spotted, but I want him to go away, so I'll take a big chunk off of him. There's a high roll, folks, a 391. And I'm just using that mobility to kind of wiggle around right here, make whatever shots that artillery is going to try to take on me much harder. And now we've got the guys coming up top. There's a 430 up there. We've got a decent crowd going up the hill. Take a quick look. He's not highlighting himself. And the 12T goes down with the T-43 taking a shot. So that was fantastic. That's a good kill. Getting scouts off of this map is going to help your team. The Lorraine goes down to that corner. Basically, he's out of the fight. He hangs out down there the rest of the game. This Ude's important target. I know I'm going to get spotted. There's another low roll. 325. 325. Now I'm starting to wonder if 390 is actually its supposed damage. Yes, 390 is the supposed damage for the Kanonenjagdpanzer 105. Now the artillery is interested in me, and all that little wiggling and jiggling helped me not get hit by it, other than just a stun. I'm going to let the stun wear off without burning 5 because I know I'm going to have it gone by the time the Comet gets in position and starts showing me guys to shoot. So there we go. Oh, I'm going to switch. There's a scout. So initially I was on the 25-2, but I saw the scout, and he did not see me. We'll come up here and we'll try to get a kill on this guy. There you go. And there's that great shell velocity that this cannon has. I didn't really have to do much lead. It was a poor shot. I should have given a little more lead. I actually just ticked the back edge of his tank. But the shell velocity saved me right there. All right, there's the 103. There's still some guys up top here, not highlighting themselves. And we're out in the lead. We've taken down 2 of their scouts. But we are on the back slope of the hill, so that's a bit of a disadvantage. I did consider here going up the hill and helping them out. But then things like this started to happen. And with no armor, I tried to track him as well, which didn't happen. That was unfortunate. I'm going to come up here and risk this, because I want this dude dead. It's just really unfortunate that he reloaded in time. Not only did I get hammered, I didn't kill him. So that was a bad trade on my part. We got him dead, but as far as hit points given away, that was a bad trade. Probably would have been dead without me sitting up there. If I had just backed off, it would have made him think about what he was doing. I also get hit by the Progetto, so I know the Progetto is close enough to highlight me. T-34 back in the corner over there. now we're going to use some of the mobility of this tank. We're starting to get map control. I noticed that 2 of our tanks have come up and around and behind their guys on the hill. Their guys on the hill are starting to get sandwiched, and they're probably going to go down pretty quickly. So I'm coming up here into this bush and see if we can't start finding their snipers who will be sitting down at the bottom. There's the Uds. The 25-2 and the IS are back at cap, and the 34 is way over there. So that means 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There goes the 34. 7 counting the artillery, and that's everything. We know where every tank is. So we get a shot in there. There's the Uds. The guys up top are dying, and I'm not worried about that guy anymore. So now what we need to do is go dig out whatever we've got down here. I know the Uds is on the other side of this rock, on the other side of that little ridge right there. They kill the guy up top. So now we're going to use the mobility to move up forward here. And again, this is something that a lot of Casemate TD players simply don't do. They'd still be sitting back on that ridge. But you've got to take a look at the game and what's going on. Put a shot into him. Hey, look at that. 293. What is wrong with this? 354 on the 45 TP. What's wrong with this gun? This gun is defective. I'm not buying the 390, folks. Taking a look at cap. The Progetto is way over there. I know there's an artillery, and more than likely he's right about there. Let's see if I can get him lit. There he is. And even with not really being pointed at him, I'm able to drop one on him. I only get 32. That was a terrible low roll. No, that was all the hit points he had left by the time I hit him. I need to be moving now. That was a bit late decision. I was kind of looking around. I was looking at the map and then looking at what they had left and trying to figure out where they were. I should have already done that and been moving as soon as I killed off the artillery, or as soon as we killed the artillery. Because the hit points are all over here. And this is another great example of what I'm talking about in the mobility of this tank, is that I'm able to get a Casemate TD from one side of the map to the other very quickly and get some of those hit points, or at least some of the spotting damage of being the guy up here looking at him. So we got the Progetto doing his thing here. Boom, there's a shot into him. That's a... Is this 390 or 290? What am I wrong the whole time? It's 390. That's a 300. That's a 3. What on earth? My gun is defective. There's something wrong with it. There he goes. This is something E25s do all the time. Come zinging in here at full speed and shoot on the run, and there it goes. Works for me again. Another terrible low roll at 64 damage. All right, that's the last example. Let's wrap this thing up. 3,347 damage, 610 spotting for an ace tanker. Alright, that is it for the review of the Kanonenjagdpanzer 105, Tier 8 German Premium, brand new Casemate Premium TD. What is my opinion of it? I am never going to tell you whether to buy something or not. There's too many things that go into that. However, let's talk about this tank a little bit as far as what it's good for, what it's maybe not good for. If you are a bush camping Casemate TD player, this is probably right up your alley. Very stealthy. Great gun. You're not going to have any trouble penning things. In fact, it's going to make a considerable amount of credits if you can drop a little bit of damage based on its very high standard penetration values. So if that's the kind of player you are, then you're going to love it. If you are a Unicum or very good player and you like a little mobility or a lot of mobility on your casemates and you want to change a pace, because if you're that good a player, rarely are you playing lots of casemates, then this thing has the strengths to kind of mitigate the weaknesses of not having a turret. Like I said, the fast, the high penetration, the decent gun, although it is going to let you down DPM wise as a good player to some extent. You have to be a little more careful with it, obviously. If you are brand new or a mediocre or average player, you can find yourself struggling in this quite a bit, especially if you have any kind of aggressive tendencies. However, if you're careful, it should be a good credit maker. And it will open up a whole new vista whole new vista for you of mobility and getting a casemate TD around the battlefield and learning how to play faster tanks, if that's what you're looking for. However, if you're just going to YOLO forward and start blapping people, this is going to be a bit of a miserable tank for you overall with the armor and the ability to get itself in trouble. All right, that's it, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Appreciate it. This thing should be available soon, and we will see ya.